Excellent. So we're about to launch into our next presentation. And I'm pleased to introduce Lorena Simonovich. Originally from Buenos Aires, Lorena is a San Francisco-based entrepreneur, designer, artist, and author. She's written and illustrated over 25 books for children with Chronicle Books, Penguin, Templar UK, and Candlewick Press. A true creative force, she is the founder of Petite Collage, a line of modern decor and playthings. Launched in 2006 with Lorena's distinctive collages on wood, the collection has since expanded to a full line of toys, games, artwork, and mobiles. Petite Collage products are sold at over 1,000 stores worldwide, including Anthropologie, Land of Nod, Giggle, and SF MoMA. In addition, Lorena has been featured in both traditional and new media such as Martha Stewart Show, New York Times, SF Chronicle, and popular blogs like Oh Joy, Design Sponge, Apartment Therapy, Print and Pattern, and many more. She's licensed artwork to Paperless Post, Pottery Barn Kids, and OXO. Lorena works in a bright, sunny studio with an amazing team on Petite Collage. When she's not busy designing a new product for her expanding company, she's illustrating her next book. She lives with her husband and daughter in a recently renovated art-filled home on a hill. Welcome, Lorena.
Hello there. Ooh, it's powerful. So my name is Lorena Simonovich, and I was told to speak slowly. You will soon know why. I happen to have a strong accent. So as many of you here, I studied graphic design in school back in Argentina, where I'm from, in Buenos Aires. In 2001, I moved to New York at a very interesting time, 2 weeks before September 11, at the end of August, and I was planning to redo my life in New York after different things happened. And so basically when I got there and all these things happened, my best friend in there said, you need to find a job and you need to buy the newspaper on Sunday. Because back in the day, there was a classified section and you look for jobs in the newspaper. So I did so, and I bought the New York Times that same Sunday, and I found a job as a designer in a gift company in New York called Gallison. And then one thing to the other, and then eventually I was a creative director in Gallison in New York for about 5 years. And it was a lovely job, and I felt like I found a new passion to design and develop products. Back in the day when I did graphic design, I had a design firm in Argentina, so I was doing your typical graphic design mostly with cultural institutions like museums and that type of thing. So when I was in New York and I got this job and I learned a lot about it, I found like it was kind of my call and my passion, and I was semi-good at it, or I was like learning as I did it, and it was quite fascinating. So I was leading 3 different catalogs. One is Gallison is a stationery company, which was recently acquired by Chronicle Books. Another one is Mad Puppy, which is a children toy game company, and another one was the Holiday Christmas collection. So then in 2007, after doing that for a few years and really enjoying it, my husband got a call to move to San Francisco. He works in fashion. He got a call to work here, so we moved. And I said, well, this is my time to start my own thing. And I knew forever, I've always been entrepreneurial. In Argentina, I had my design firm. The only job I ever had was basically that job in New York, which was fantastic, and I had a lot of freedom. But it was the only time I worked for somebody else. So I knew I wanted to start something. And what I did, and let's see if this thingy works. Right now I have this company that you were hearing about, and we do toys and decor and so on. So Petite Collage is today a global brand that inspires little ones with uniquely modern goods. Our range of gifts, toys, and decor is thoughtfully designed with our planet in mind. So nowadays we do everything from placemats and push toys and mobiles and puzzles. But back in the day, I basically came to San Francisco. I was working a little bit for a New York company still. In the first year, I had to go to New York about 13 times in a year, and I decided that it was quite a lot, probably too much. So I needed to start something on my own. And I started in a very, very random way. I had a pregnant friend, and we were going to meet her. And I was like very in my head working a lot in the computer because I was telecommuting, working at 6 in the morning with New York office. I had my designers in New York. So I felt very like computerized, like, like in the mouse, and I remember I had this issue with my arm hurting from being the computer. So when we are going to see a friend, I'm like, you know what, I have all this collection of papers, I'm just gonna like cut some stuff and make some art for my friend, which was a very random and new feeling. So I did this little piece of art, which hangs in her studio, and I love this thing. Like, I love cutting the papers, I love the connection with like the physical thing that I was missing from being connected to the computer 24/7. And I remember I had a night of no sleep, which is very rare of me because I'm quite a good sleeper. And all night I'm thinking how I'm gonna make this into something else. How can I make more collages? What am I gonna do with this? So coincidentally, for some reason, I had seen in an art store, just like blinking here, those wood panels where you can make art on. And I started connecting the pieces in my mind and asking questions like, how can I put papers on this wood? So long story short, I made by hand a few collages, and in my next trip to New York, I took them to a few stores in Brooklyn. Bag in hand, collages inside, hi, I make this thing, and would you wanna buy it? And I remember the first store, this was pre-crisis, so it's not that, that easy to do that nowadays. I remember the lady was like, those are great, I love them, but you're an artist and you're never gonna send me your order. So I'm gonna tell you right now how much you're gonna charge me. I'm gonna write for you on this piece of paper what you have to do, and you're gonna send them to me. And like, she tell me all how to wrap them, like she's like, all like, I'm like, okay. So I'm in business, like I have an order of collages. So then I go like to the next block, and I'm like, that lady over there, that cool store, she ordered, do you wanna order? And she picked that, and she picked that, and I get my second order. This was a kid's store, it was very beautiful in Brooklyn. So then I come back to San Francisco, and I'm like, I guess I'm doing this. So I call this store in Fillmore Street, Sync Details, which is a customer nowadays, 7 years later. And I'm like, so I'm doing this like modern art for children, little collage and wall thing. She's like, okay, I will take them. So, one thing to the other, and there was a couple of websites back in the day that carry this type of things, and I contact them, and I was like very encouraged. And back in the day, I don't think there was a lot of offering into modern art for children's spaces. So I was breaking up with the whole pastel mold and so on. So I had this thing, the first thing I did, order of days, like I made a website. I remember one day to the other I have to put a name. Little did I know I was gonna be doing this now. So if you have to pick a name, be a little more mindful that I was, because I was like doing a petit collage, like a small collage. It's called a petit collage, it's French, sounds good. and now I was in a trade show in Germany last week, and your last name is German, you have a Latin accent, your company name is French, what's wrong with you? like it's very daunting. So try for it to make more sense if you're gonna pick a name. So I was doing that, and then I was like, oh, I should probably make a catalog. I mean, I knew I did, the gift business. So I made a little catalog, and I have 4 pages, and I showed this in my friend's house in Argentina with this little girl with the collages. I have done about 2 posters, hand silkscreen here in Oakland, and basically I started to make mobiles with bamboo. Baby mobiles that kind of resemble my art. And I realized I was into something. People liked the look. The handmade collages were quite expensive, but I felt like I was into a look or something people were responding to. So in 2009, it was a big year for me. I happened to have a kid, which makes things a little different. And when I was in the hospital with the baby, newborn, first day, I got a call from the Martha Stewart show, which was very timely. As a matter of fact, this photo is taken when my daughter was 2 months old, and I flew with her to New York to do the show. So 2009 also was a wonderful year. We signed our first licensing agreements, both with Chronicle, which some of Brooks you see in the screen, and with Matt Papi, which was the company I used to work for, and we stay in a very nice relationship. So I finally was like, oh, well, I am into something. This look is kind of taking off, right? Like people are making products, like I'm feeling it. So for a while, we were basically a modern decor company. We were doing alphabet posters, wall decals, mobiles of sorts, all sort of things. And actually this photo is styled by Meg Mateo Ilasco, who you heard from early this morning, if you were an early bird. So we shot this in like my house, we moved everything out, and that's how we did it back in the day. Homemade. So we were doing this, and it was doing great, and we were selling to some accounts like Land of Nod and Pottery Barn and so on. So the line kept growing. it was still like, okay. Luckily, I wasn't paying the bills. The husband was, was trying to make a living in there. In 2010, I had gone to some classes in a local school called Renaissance. It's a business school in San Francisco, which I highly recommend. They have different packages to start your own business. So I had gone there, and I was in their mailing list, and they called me, and they were like, there's this like women entrepreneur competition nationwide. It's called Make Mine a Million. And it's this woman in New York who wants to empower women. She wants to empower 1 million women to make $1 million. That's this woman's goal. So I read more about this woman who has a fantastic resume, and she invented Bring Your Daughters to Work Day and worked with Hillary, and fantastic woman. And I'm like, oh, that sounds quite cool. She's saying all the women are doing the shopping, why are we not making the money, right? So I'm like, okay. So I participated in this competition, and I became an awardee. And through that, I got cash because it was sponsored by American Express, and I also got business coaching package, which up to the day I still use a different, but a business coach. And the most important and valuable thing which I got was a network of women nationwide, and we call it the sisters, that we help each other basically through business. We have a Yahoo group, and we ask each other and help each other in the most adverse circumstances, from personal to business, from like my friend lady, like my plastic molds are stuck, who can help me? They're somewhere, and somebody knows the head of FedEx and calls literally in the moment, or somebody went through different personal circumstances. So that women network is today one of my most cherished resources beyond the cash or the coaching or whatnot. So that's something important to keep in mind, like networks and people who are there for you all the time, like we got each other's back. It's been really amazing for me. So 2010 was a huge year because now I'm awardee for this thing, and I'm getting press. And besides all the resources and the network of ladies, what it was about 300 people in an audience. I have to vote what business was going to be taken to the $1 million mark, and there was all these like judges who were like write about business in all these magazines and such. And the whole experience was for me somebody telling me, you can do this. Like all these people are saying you can do this. I was like, oh, okay. I'm interested. It's this reassurance, because the life of an entrepreneur, in a way, you're a little lonely sometimes, and you are kind of up in your head, and your mother and your husband say it's okay, but is it okay, and can I do this? And I think between that and 2010 and 2009, having my daughter, it was also like, okay, if I'm not gonna be with this kid all day, I better be doing something really meaningful, or really like just pushing through this, right? So those were really kind of key moments in my career that I feel like, those clicks, things happen in your life, both personal and professional, where you just feel. So I feel in a way that was it. Like I was doing it. I wasn't complaining anymore. I wasn't like, oh, I do this and I make no money and blah, blah, blah. So I was like, okay, I'm deep down, I'm diving. We are in business. So in 2011, I hired 2 more employees for my business. I still have the same tiny basement office in the Mission, which I'm now fit a team of 7, God knows how. But I had that same tiny office back then. And in 2011, I hired 2 more employees, and I started to delegate a little more. Through the network of the Make Mine a Million, I got a call from the founder, this amazing woman, Nell Merlino, and she says she has a scholarship that I was selected for this thing, which is in Tech Business School in Dartmouth. They have executive training program for minorities, and basically it's like this super rush mini MBA in 10 days or so, where you go through all the MBA basics for people who had not ever taken an MBA, like my case. And so it was quite short notice, and I had to do a lot of application things. So I did that, and I went to that experience, which was fascinating and reassuring in a way, and a lot of learning. And it was like Sunday, 8 a.m., accounting 101. Like, okay. And everyone is like, they have basically show you how big the world is. We are in our own artist minds, and we think pretty much everyone must do this. And there were people, construction businesses from Atlanta, and catering businesses from Minnesota, and like all sorts of multi-million-dollar businesses and different entrepreneurs. And we all have the same struggles in a way, and a very different setting. So I still have some of those friends too from business school, with very, very diverse businesses. So that was another kind of big thing. I feel like, like just, and if you see there's a pattern where like, this thing took me to this thing and these people invite me to that thing, and in a way like I just remain connected and network and found these opportunities, and in a way I jump at different, some of them, and that's been really great. So when I come back from that thing, the people from, also by then I have gotten a loan from the city of San Francisco, who was a fantastic loan if you're in need of money. A very interesting loan program with a very low interest rate by a company called TMC, the Working Solution. And so they have awarded me the San Francisco loan, and so they said, oh, there's another organization called Pacific Community Ventures that mentors mentors entrepreneurs, and we can hook you up with a CFO, CEO, just like person that knows a lot for 5 hours a month for free. I was like, bring it in. So I started working with PCV, and the first thing we did was a roundtable. So they have very, very experienced and senior people in the Bay Area that sit with you in a roundtable for about 8 people through their lunch. They take a long lunch, and they sit and they say, what are your pains? And you put together a little presentation and you tell them what you're suffering from, which is mostly lack of cash, and some other things. And they kind of help and basically brainstorm on like how to take your business to a next level. So I've been very fortunate to be in the Bay Area and find all these resources and network and people who are so willing to help and kind of like invest in taking business to a next level. So now we are a more serious business. In 2012, something really big happened, which is we launched our first toy line. So as I was doing all these decor items and such, I started seeing all the different businesses coming out of left and right doing basically the same thing for different reasons. Like, so everyone was doing an alphabet poster for kids' rooms, and there were more offerings with the World Decals was very popular, and I was like, okay, what's next? So we launched our toy line, and 2 years ago, with about 9 items, we call them SKUs in the industry, so with 9 SKUs, and today we have about 65 2 years later. So that's quite a big part of our growth. So in 2013, I was still not making a whole lot of money, and I felt this pain. I remember my husband, we were once in a trip, and we sat down, and he's like, I don't want to hear you complain one more time. I'm done. Close the business or make it work. I'm done. And this guy came in, and we paid him dearly, and he basically said everything. You have too many employees, or you're not making enough money. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what's next for you? And it was like really kind of like strong for me to hear that, but it was also very healing that somebody names your pain, and they're like, oh, this is what you got. So I was like, well, I'm not letting go any employees, so we're gonna double our revenue for next year. So that's basically what happened. And so the line grew significantly, and so did grow our sales. So we started signing with distributors internationally. In Canada, Australia, which is our biggest one, Korea and Hong Kong, who have a few more now. And then in 2014, basically where we are today, we sell in more than 1,000 stores. We sell to Barnes & Noble in 460 stores, Barnes, Anthropology, we're in all the stores these holidays, Giggle, ModCloth, Amazon, of course, Whole Foods. So now we are a team of 7, and we have our dear CFO who talks to us about 2 hours a month. And this is our booth in the latest trade show with all our offerings, so it gives you a feel of what we do and what we are about. And we also have this division where we and I write and illustrate children's books. We have about 30 children's books. Before it was 25, I did 5 in the last few minutes. We moved that fast. So we have 30 children's books, and we just launched our first craft book, lifestyle book with Random House. Chronicle has been an amazing partner in our journey. We have about 20 board books out of the 30 books I have are with Chronicle. So not only we license our stationery, but we also do board books with them. We have 2 best-selling collections with them. The latest one is here, You're My Baby, and that's with our branded Petit Collage, so that we cross-promote each other a lot. So we also have a licensing division, and this has been quintessential in my survival and paying of the bills, which I will tell you about later. So we have licensing partners. So we go and say, okay, what do we do? Like, what do we manufacture, and what will be interesting to manufacture somebody else who is a leader in their space? So we work very closely with the gift wrap company, who does a lot of bags and gift wraps and bows and so on. We work with a company, Calypso, who does greeting cards. Of course, we work with Chronicle for some stationery. We have a very large collection of online invites and birth announcements from paperless post. And we have all digital skins and covers with New Van Gogh. And we are finishing our fabric collection now for Windham. And we're working also on rugs and a few other fascinating things, which also keeps me interested in learning different techniques. I just got a bit of a 101 on rug making. I had no idea how they make rugs, and these things are different scales. So I think as a designer, that entertains me, the idea of collaborating with different other people that are doing something different and they have a different reality. So just seeing the factory, seeing how they work, like this is not only a revenue and a fantastic income source for us, but it's also me as a designer and in your pants type of person. It keeps me interested, and like I really love the collaboration. So I'll take about 59 seconds of your time to show you this little video we made for our book launch for the craft book, but it kind of embodies the spirit of Petit Collage in a few seconds, and then I start telling you after this some thoughts, if God forbid you want to be an entrepreneur, my thoughts on that. They made me do that. All right, hope you enjoyed that. I just felt like sometimes you say a picture is worth 1,000 words. The video really captures what we are all about as a brand and what I'm trying to build in here. All right, thank you, Erin. So that was a lot about me, quite more than I'm used to, and I now will talk about what will be a journey like this for you guys. Like if you were interested in starting your own business and owning it, what will be for you being a designer, an artist. So one of the things that I appreciate, and one of the good news is like entrepreneurs, like designers, are in the business of creating the future. And I truly believe that, and I think that's the reason I chose this journey in a way, and why it may resonate to you as well. So I put here a few good news if you, designer, creative person, wanted to start your own business. So good news number one, creative people can easily apply their nature to grow in a business. You dream up things all the time, right? And there is a woman that I have the pleasure to meet, and I have that in my last page as resources. She came out with a theory called effectuation. Her name is Sarah Sarabasti. She's in Virginia business school, and she believed that everything we were told about entrepreneurship is wrong. Like you don't have to write a business plan. Good news. And she has a website called effectuation.org where she has a lot of her papers research. She dedicated her life to create a body of works about how entrepreneurs really work. And it's quite fascinating, and it resonates a lot with our nature as designers, which basically she believes we create the future. So you enjoy the blank page. You will likely love the thrill of business as a blank page every day if it's not a headache. The other good news is that given your background and what you're doing here, you can choose between a service-based business, meaning illustration, licensing, that may be, or design or illustration, or a product-based business, which is what I did. Trust me, you want the first one. You're probably a bit delusional, which is great for business. I'm a witness. I think that one of the top 3 things about an entrepreneur is like you gotta be delusional, eternal optimist. Otherwise you won't do it, right? Why would you get into this mess? So, bad news, you will likely not spend too much time designing, and this happens to me a lot. When I tell people what I do all day, they think that they don't imagine that. You will likely spend your time in Excel and emails. It will possibly take you forever to make any money. It's possible that you are not great with numbers, just judging here. Also possible that you are not great at sales. Both are required skills to run a successful business, and you will need to find help in those areas. So another great book, bestseller internationally, very well known, kind of a primer, and I mentioned that as well later, is The E-Myth. Actually, Michael Gerber, he is in the Bay Area, and he says that the #1 problem why 90-something% of businesses fail in America is that because people think that because they have a technical skill, they can run a business. So the typical anecdote that he goes about is like, you are the best hairdresser in the salon. You have no time in your calendar, you're fully booked, you charge more, you're still fully booked, you're the best. So you're like, I'm opening my own salon, right? So you go and do that, and suddenly you're not cutting hair anymore. You gotta order inventory, you gotta manage the other 5 people in the chair, you're gonna have to do payroll, and that's the #1 frustration, is like the technical skills that you may have that make you such a good, in this case, hairdresser, artist, designer, may not mean that you're the best business owner. And another part of frustration is to learn that once you do that, you may not be exercising your #1 love, which in this case was hair cutting. So that book is a great book to kind of understand that and in a way navigate around that if you're still interested in doing this. So let's say, because you're still sitting here like we're doing this, I'm gonna pretend we're doing this, and I'm gonna walk you through some steps of what I think, what I learned a little bit, not only from my own experience, which is very little and precise, but from all these groups that I belong to and all these other people that I talk to. So the #1 thing, and I really mean it, is like don't chase the money or what it seems like will be a more like the latest venture. Really find your passion. If you don't have to work all day, what would you do? Like just like figure that out and then think how you monetize that. Like you really have to wake up excited every day because it's gonna be a really hard road for you eventually to earn money. Otherwise it's much easier to go get a job, get paid for it. The second thing is super important, and we talk about this with Lisa, is find your own voice. What's your niche? Don't do the same that everyone else unless you have something really special to bring to the table. And then, this is another book that I'm gonna tell you about. Talk to people, learn about the customer. Another fascinating book is The Lean Startup. And what they talk about is, bringing product to people before we even have the product. Like what will it look like? Don't even build it, just talk about it and see how we may need to change in order to be out in the marketplace. So the other thing, and this is a big one for me, is envision how it will look when you succeed. Like think big, like we call it blue sky in my office. Break it into steps. What are you doing in 3 years? How will it look in 6 months if all that went well? In 3 years, you own this thing and you're doing X. And now, okay, so you're there, and how do we come back to it? What will it look in 3 months when you know that you're succeeding? And then once you did all this beautiful exercise, you gotta write it. So find your inner measure. This is probably the most #1 thing I wanna say today, is what is important to you. We have all these mandates from our parents or our partners, and it's like, for you, what's important? Is it profit? Is it revenue? And I say, let it be your mantra, your guiding light. You're breathing and living that goal. So people ask me like, oh, well, do you believe in business plans? I'm like, no. I believe in business path or business goals. I feel like a business plan, when made in the long term, is a structure too big to hold in a daily in a fluent world, in a world that lives and breathes. So I believe in little things, and sometimes when you find that, and I talk about that again a little later, is make it your own in the fact that you can own it and live it, and it could be a really small thing, but you are like, that's what you wake up every day with, that's your vision, that's what you're doing. And it really, kind of crazy, like, kind of works. Like that book, The Secret, or one of those boo-boo books. Like you make this, like you're living and breathing thing, and it works. So build the numbers, learn about the business, buy Lisa's books. Do you need a little money to get this started? Can you bootstrap? Ask friends and family for some money. Do you have a part-time job? Get angel investors. They're all valid options for starting your own business. I personally bootstrapped my business. When I came here in 2001, I had about $6,000 in my pocket and a portfolio, and that was about it. And then I basically, one thing took to the other, and I saved money. And then through my services and my royalty businesses, I managed to build my product business. For years, I was told, stop doing products. If you didn't do any products, you will make money. Because every penny I earn from making my books, I will put into making products. To the point that many advisors were like, no, like you're like basically pouring all this money into here. Are you sure? Now, all that business, the royalty business is only 10% of my product business, which is much bigger. So all of these are really valid ways of starting your own business. You know, having a part-time job, even a full-time job, and you do this at night. Like, there's different ways that may work for you, and there's not kind of one cookie-cutter answer to this. So this is what I was talking about before, and it's really like the most important thing is like find your own path to success. I feel like one thing nobody told me, maybe because it's America, is big is not always better. And like for me, what probably the one lesson is like, wait, why am I growing all the time? Why am I hiring more people? Like, can somebody stop this thing? Like I was almost like told and believed that bigger was always better, and it may not be for everyone. Meg was telling me earlier, oh, like, you know, I don't know how you do it. Like, you hire more people. I just want to be left alone. Like, you know, I don't want to be like dealing with these things. And I think there's a different inner measure to each of us, and there's not a one solution. So you also, when you go into business, you gotta think, what are you doing this for? Like, are you making a business because you want to sell this in 3 years and get a VC and all this, like, you know, Bay Area talk? Or are you doing this because you want to build a lifestyle company where you don't want to pay 1 cent of tax, and every trip you do, you're going to invest through your business, and you just want to pay the bills, be happy, travel the world, sort of thing. Different, I know, you know, companies who are husband and wife, and that's what they do. You know, they have a lifestyle business, they write everything off, try to avoid paying as much as possible, make a living, pay for the kids' school. We are in business. There's people who want to, you know, delegate, build this thing, sell the business, or even get investments. There are very different reasons why you may choose a path or the other, but you want to make sure that you know what path you're into. And I didn't learn this until like quite long into the trip, that into the journey, that I had that option, that I could like, you know, go one way or the other. I feel like I was just like going without really thinking where I was going. And there's a point where that strategy will really help you. You may make very different decisions whether you want to, you know, own this for the next 30 years and leave it to your kids, or you want to like sell it in 4 years and make it huge and so on. So the strategy. Hello? No? Oh yeah, exactly. I have to show you about that. They don't even know. Oh yeah, it's right there. Okay. So okay, find your path. Okay. So you gotta build a team if you're gonna do this. First measures will be to find a good CPA and a good lawyer. You're gonna create whatever entity you need to be doing, LLC, an S corp. If you're gonna get investors or not, that changes. So you need to create some structure for which you need a lawyer, and you need a CPA to figure out all the implications of that. And if you can, I advise you to have some sort of team of advisors. I don't have an official team, but I have a bunch of people who help me on different levels. Try to find other people in your field that you admire, and they can become mentors. They can be a professor, a family friend, a lost cousin. Just ask, and that's another thing that the effectuation theory believes in is ask, ask, and ask again. People love to help people, so if you ask for the right help, things will happen. So I recently was part of a very small group in Washington. We met with a design legend that I admire very much, is Bruce Mau, and with an exercise called 48 Hours to Massive Change. And if you don't know this guy's work, look it up. He's quite the genius. So he talks about many things, but one of the things that I appreciate the most, or that I apply the most to me, and I think it will resonate to you as designers, is design your own Madonna curve. What the heck is this, you're asking yourself? So he believes that Madonna, as an artist, reinvented herself before she went, before basically her latest incarnation became dated. So she has the ability to reinvent herself. So to put a better, more applicable example to us, he believes Apple does this very well, right? You bought the black computer and you think you're super cool, and they already launched the white computer, and you're like, what? Like, I just got this, and now I have to get that. And so he says most business, like in business, like doing great, and then they start doing not so well, and when they're like about to crash, they call for help. So he believes as a business owner is what we need to do, or designers, as a matter of fact, what we need to do is reinvent ourselves ahead of the crash curve. So you're up here, and then you need to go up there and up there. You can't let yourself go like this and then call for help. So if you are going to design kind of what is that you're gonna be doing, it's super amazing if you can do that considering this curve, right? Like I'm gonna be doing, let's say I knew this, which I didn't clearly. I'm gonna be doing decor for a few years, and then everyone will do this, and there will be all these mompreneurs coming out of left and right field, so I'm gonna start doing the toys before that thing become obsolete. So if I were to have designed my own Madonna curve, which semi-happened intuitively for us, more out of a gut than a plan, I will have thought about this in advance. And I think it's interesting for you to think, well, I do this, and then I do that, and then like how will your business evolve versus a one-trick pony? Because that's really the nature of a business, to kind of stay alive. So last but not least, and I still have more, so don't fall asleep yet. Enjoy the ride, be true to yourself, and this is a very big one. We tend to be stubborn. Recalculate if needed. It's totally okay. You thought it was going to be that way, it went that way. The other person did it first. That didn't work. Red wasn't the most popular color. Recalculate. Like, it's fine. You will have to like pick up yourself more than once if you're going to be in business for a while. So a couple of don'ts. Don't check your email in the morning, people. That's a big one. Seriously, like you probably like go all like happy to your office desk computer, and you're like, I'm gonna do A, B, and C today, and then you check your email, and what happened? No A, B, no B, no C. Like you do what the email says, right? So don't check your email in the morning. Do the most important things before noon, and then you can check email. Don't expect a salary for the first year or two. Don't fall in love with your inventory. God forbid you're in an inventory business like me. Just imagine it like when you're thinking about those shelves with the stuff you make, cash bundle sitting on a shelf. You gotta move it. Like you can't like fall in love and be like, oh, it's so pretty, they don't know because they don't sell, but they're so nice, and one day somebody will come and buy them. Nope, you gotta put them on sale. Don't fall in love with your employees. I mean, I don't mean in a literal way, like if you have to marry the operations manager, it's fine. I mean like, right, like, and I'm kind of victim of this because I love them all, but hire slow and fire fast is my number one advice. Really. Don't say yes to everything. I did this for years. It's a disaster. You gotta like, oh yeah, sure. You want me to come all the way to I don't know where to like sell 5 things? Sure, I'll do it. Nope. No, focus. You did that too, Lisa. Don't laugh. So do delegate. This is very important. As entrepreneurs, we are like, oh, I can do it all, I can do it better, I'll do it myself, it's fine. I'll do it after I put the kids to bed, like at 11 p.m. I'll start doing that. Hire better people than you. You can have it all if you don't do it all. And this is a phrase of my mentor, Nahl, from that organization in New York. You can have it all if you don't do it all. Learn what you do best, and then get the best people to do the rest. Like, this is like huge. And it has to do a lot with your self-worth too. Like, can you handle that there is better people than you out there? Another big part of effectuation is ask, network, and ask again. For this exercise with this, the effectuation lady, Sarah, she asked me to call for 30 days, this is part of her ongoing research on entrepreneurship, me and a lot of entrepreneurs nationwide, every day we have to call this line, which was, we have a little code, and say, what do we ask for and what was the outcome? Because she believes a lot of the entrepreneurs, like the ones that made it big, really, really thrive for asking and networking. So we did this exercise as part of her research of her book coming up, where every day I will be like, yeah, so I asked for a discount and it didn't fly. Or I asked for, so every day I will have to call and I have to force myself to ask something. Ask an employee to be on time. Ask a vendor for terms. Ask. Super important, and we are so shy and sometimes are so self-conscious that we don't do this enough. So think of alternative ways to subsidize the growth of your company. For me, it was services. I was telling you, like every penny I was making on the books or on the services, on the licensing, I put it into product making because I was convinced that that was the future. You don't have to have a business plan. You need some sort of roadmap. You're very creative. You can probably draw something pretty. So some sort of roadmap, like back of the envelope, back of the napkin. That's important. I don't believe in big shiny things and whatever, but something that will guide you, where you know I'm in peace with this. This is it. I can do this. So again, stick to your vision. Recalculating is fine. Getting distracted is not. Noise is fear. So noise is fear is like, I was back in the day a professor in school, in graphic design school, and I had a student who did a wonderful, beautiful job 2 ahead of the deadline. So in the next correction, she kept bringing the same beautiful stuff with more things and patterns, and she was adding, and at the end, I was like, all this stuff is noise, because you're afraid of your own mighty powers, which is you finish ahead, and it's beautiful, and it's done. And you can't even own this, so you keep adding stuff. So I believe that sometimes I add things for fear, and it's important to keep that clean. So lastly, this is something from Bruce Mao, but it's from John Cage, is like begin anywhere, really. Like, you're like, okay, well, that was great, and what the heck am I gonna do? So begin anywhere. If this is really something you wanna do, anywhere where you begin. There is not a start and a finish line. You can really start anywhere from this. So in about a minute, I'll tell you about these books that you should be reading if you're interested. So I mentioned them through this. So the E-Myth Revisited is the one from Michael Gerber about how entrepreneurs fail and what can they do about that. One that I adore is Anything Harvard Business School Press, particularly the Guide to Getting the Work Done, which will tell you to not check email in the morning, just so you know. The Lean Startup, very great for product-driven businesses. Glimmer is a book about Bruce Mao's work, and Effectuation.org is the work from Professor Sarah Bassi, I was telling you, from Darden School of Business in Virginia. And that's it. Right? Think? Yeah? Awesome. Yeah.
Is that okay? So we're going to ask a couple more questions, and because that mic isn't working right now, if you could just say things loudly and clearly. Does anybody want to start?
Oh, come on. You people.
This is exciting.
No?
I actually was curious if you could talk about if you feel comfortable sharing, what your mantra is that really helps to kind of keep you on track as you are expanding and letting all this new information come in over time.
Yeah, it's hard to keep in track sometimes, and what I do this little exercise, which allegedly I do it for my employees, but I do it for myself really, which is we call the offsite, and I basically make breakfast for everyone in my house, and I made them a little presentation similar to this, and I say, oh, what's next and what has happened and what not, and in a way, it's a lot of work, but it also helps me feel like, okay, we are here and this is where we are going. And it helps me kind of put things into some sort of paper or form, because I'm normally going so fast, as you may have noticed. And we laugh because I find this on the offsites, right? They're all stapled together in paper sometimes, and I sometimes read them aloud. I'm like, remember when I said we're gonna be in like whatever countries? Like, you know, so sometimes writing those little goals that I then share with my team make them very believable, and we all are aiming to that. So sometimes it's like a country I want to be selling in, or it could be a revenue figure, or it could be a percentage of profit on a product line, or whatever our next future may be. I write that down, and it really, really helps me. Like I just get that somewhere in my brain, and hopefully my team's brain. And for some reason, we find the old ones that happened a couple of years ago, and we're like, done. Like it helps us make it true in a way. Like it's just write it, and then it's powerful. That answers.
That's great. Excellent. Thank you.
What's the group that you're in? Is that accessible to others?
I'm in several groups. The first one that I mentioned that is so powerful is only for the awardees of this competition nationwide. But the association is called Count Me In. It's in New York for Women Economic Independence, and they have different programs. They have now one with veteran women who came back, and so they have different programs that they may do, so you can check out their website, and they have many resources as well. The Renaissance Business School in San Francisco in the city is a great resource as well. And then if you were to have a company which needs to have X amount of employees or whatever, Pacific Community Ventures is a company that mentors small businesses with the goal that they will hire more employees, especially from economically challenged neighborhoods.
Great. Back there.
How many hours a day do you spend on your business?
How many hours a day there is? Ask my husband, he's sitting in front of you. I actually I decided early on, and probably the CFO didn't like that I wasn't gonna work 24/7 because I have a little kid who's 5 now. So I work 9 to 6, and I don't work on the weekends in general, although there is always a trade show or a trip or a photo shoot or whatnot. But I decided early on to kind of delegate and get more employees instead of like being like the one-woman show, and in a way forced me to be bigger. Like I guess if I were and was like checking emails at night and doing 2 or 3 people's jobs, I could have like possibly be more profitable earlier on and work more, but I kind of didn't want to divorce basically. So I don't think there's a one answer, but I am a believer of like the old-fashioned, hiring and growing versus like working 24/7.
Lisa?
Yeah, I don't really have a question, but I do want to just say that I actually have known Lorena since she first moved to San Francisco. We are now officially extremely close friends and have been for a long time. And one of the things that's most impressive to me about her is, often, and I suffer from this all the time, I don't necessarily want feedback on how I can do things better, because I have this weird belief that it's sort of,
Thank you, Lisa. I love you.
It seems like you've given us some good advice about don't fall in love with the employees, don't order the inventory on the shelf. Have you had to also tell yourself that about particular designs?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I'm becoming so much tougher. So, Michael, right?
Dave.
That was not right. Okay, Dave here, sorry, we just met, in my defense. Is working with that team of wonderful people here from CCA. They are doing the Design MBA, and Petit Collage is their case study for the next 5 months of sorts, and we are collaborating. I did email most of them and met him once, sorry about name confusion. So to answer your question, I can kill my own designs fairly easily at this point, but I have worked with 2 very talented designers who do most of the design in my office, and it's hard to not hurt people's feelings, and even right now, like we are finishing our spring collection, which should have been done a week ago, and now we stopped because we are translating some stuff to other languages, and it's kind of like disaster. My designer was there at 8:30 p.m. last night in sending me stuff, and one of the products she sent me, I'm like, I don't know if this is gonna sell. And I look at it, and honestly, like and you know, she changed the packaging, and now it seems a little more promising. But if it was not, like, if I'm like, I can sell like thousands of units of this, that needs to die now, because I'm literally like putting my money into that versus something that may be better. I mean, and also has to do with something with like, are we providing enough value for the consumer? Like, is this enough in this box for this money? So not only I ask myself about the design, but also the value. Okay, is this $7? Like, is this person gonna be happy when she opens this box? So I try to be so present, because I don't have a lot of opportunities because things move really fast. Because normally in a bigger company you have this review and this other review, and we are just like, you know, like working like 2 seasons behind what Chronicle is doing, and we're doing what ships in January, like now. So I have to be so present and really be there. And I have felt like I have not spoken in the past, and then I see the stuff and it's like not thriving, and I'm like, I kind of knew that one wasn't, you know, it was just, didn't want to create a controversy, so I'm trying to become a better leader that way, because at the end I'm not making anyone a favor. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's good. Anybody else?
So you told a story about the starting of a business, and that was that at the beginning you were a one-man show.
That's right.
You literally went from place to place with goods, presented them to people, and they sold. The next part seemed to be that you went to people, you went to organizations and asked for guidance,
Yes.
and you were still a one-man show at that point. Kind of.
Yeah, kind of. I'll be happy to answer. Let's listen to your question.
And so I was just wondering if at that point did you find that there were people who were giving you advice about how to transition to be a business that had capital and find investors at that point when you hadn't really been a business person, you had just been an artist or somebody who made things? Because there are a lot of people who won't provide capital, or a bank's not going to lend money necessarily. You have to find a group of people who think that you are not risk averse.
Exactly.
Person.
That's a very good question. I appreciate your question, because I was trying to put a lot in 50 minutes. So I may have skipped how I got to have this wonderful team I have now, and those, some of the few steps in between. I see the disconnect now that you mention it. So I was a one-person show very immediately, basically. I hired my first designer, who was part-time, and it's Annie, and she's still with me. And she's now the senior designer. And then eventually, when I had my kid in 2009, I hired a girl to do all the payables and the administration and all that stuff. So we were 2. And then eventually, I kept adding people to the team, an operations manager and so on. I never got any investors so far. I did in about 2010 or something. Got a loan. At the time, I was raised thinking you don't get into debt. You don't ask for money. But at the time, I realized, because it was one thing check to the other, like we do the collages and we do a nice profit. Okay, let me pour that profit into making the posters hand-printed in Oakland. And we make some money with that. Oh, maybe I can do like 100 hand-cut laser mobiles from these people. So I was like kind of like that. So at some point, this opportunity presented itself that was like, oh, you know, there's these loans from the city that are like $15,000. yeah, I think it was $15,000 at 4% interest, and you can have this loan. I was like, but you have to tell us what we'll do with the money. I was like, mouth-watering. Well, I can do plenty of things with this money. So I got that first loan, and then they introduced me to a wonderful bank called New Resource, which only works with sustainable businesses here, and they've been very, very generous with my line of credit. Hence, I also didn't need to get any investors. But for the longest time, maybe even 3 years, my salary was exactly what I was paying my nanny, so that I could work. And husband here was paying all the bills. So it was a long road, and that's why I complained so much. I was like, what the heck am I doing all day? Like, this is like kind of like not turning. And I think that you need to achieve some sort of like critical mass of volume to be able to really make a profitable, nice living. And that took me years, and I had no idea what I was getting into in a way. Like, there's like no roadmap. So in a way, I think once you start showing like, oh, I may only do this handmade stuff, and look, they're profitable. And I mean, our business was never not profitable in the 7 years. I mean, yes, maybe a year I made a couple $1,000s and not a huge profit, but we never lost money, and I think that helped. And so Working Solutions here in the financial district, they let you borrow money for very small businesses, people who are opening a one office type of deal, nail salons, all type of operations, exactly to aid, and that's the money from the city, all the people who are not bankable, they call it. Like, a bank won't give you money. So there are resources. There's also SCORE, which is an organization for retired people who have been CEOs, CFOs, and they're in their 60s or maybe earlier, and they retire, and they will volunteer all these hours of time to help you. Like, you go to their house, and you're like, what am I doing with this? And they literally pour their time into you. And there's other resources through SBA, Small Business Administration. So there is kind of some resources out there that help me, and many of them, including the Working Solutions, their goal is that you will hire more people. So if you say, well, I'm going to do this line, and then I'm able to hire another person, that's what they are doing. For San Francisco alone, I was obligated to hire one more people in the next 24, 48 months, which I was kind of ready to do. So basically, I was growing the team one by one and kind of trying to keep it small because of the overhead, right? Yeah. Did that answer? Kind of? Yeah.
I think we have to wrap up,
Okay.
but thank you so much, Lorena.
So you'll hear more. If you have specific publishing questions, I think the next presentation would be the one to ask it at. But here's some of the projects and weird things that I work on. So nice art books, weird things like Portapug, and then stationery with Lorena I worked on, artists like Nikki McClure. Joe Bliss was a student at CCA when I worked with her on that Native Flowers journal over here, and many other artists. So that is enough about me. Susan.
All right. Thank you. It's so nice to be here. So I'm just going to go through some of my images to give you guys an idea of the work that I do. Do I just press the yellow thing?
Press to the right.
Okay. So my work often begins with conversations, and I use these conversations as a way to inspire different text works, a lot of them that are in public spaces. And so this was actually a project that I did with the Thing Quarterly, which actually just published a book through Chronicle, and they collaborated with Levi's to do this kind of guerrilla campaign around San Francisco and all different cities. So they asked me to make a few of them, and this was actually at the Castro station in San Francisco. This was the subway station in New York. This was actually the Castro station again. So this all really began, I wish I had this slide first, because this is sort of a seed from a lot of this work. Began with this project that I did with Christina called the Pep Talk Squad. And we were a nomadic force that wore really nerdy outfits in public spaces. And we're willing to talk to anyone who wanted to talk to us about anything, and we would offer them words of support. And at the end, we cheered for them, which really often freaked people out. So this was really kind of the seed for me beginning to talk to people and engage with people in a public space, oftentimes talking to strangers, as a way to fuel a lot of the work that I do. And I think this is something that I still love to do and get a lot of energy out of doing today.
Susan was at CCA during this project.
Yes,
when this project
yeah,
was born.
yeah. So here's us doing the pep talk squad. So here's some more examples. These are called inspirational signs. And this was something that just kind of came out of the pep talk squad, but kind of began to have a life of its own, really. It began as a small show at a gallery in San Francisco, and then it was one of those things that people just kept on asking me to do. And this was an installation that was actually in Poland, and I did a few billboards there that were actually translated into Polish as well, which was really fun. And here they are in Polish. This says, "You are exactly where you need to be," or at least I hope that's what it says. This was a project that I did at Montalvo Art Center, which is this wonderful artist residency in the South Bay in the Santa Cruz Hills. And they asked me to do a project with 2 other artists, and this is with an artist named Leah Rosenberg, and we did this walk along their nature path, and we called it a healing walk. And she made these beautiful, colorful walking sticks that you could use along the way. And they were a series of signs that took you up to a beautiful view. And some of them were instructive, and some of them were just more contemplative. This is a project I did at the Palo Alto Art Center. It was called Community Advice, and I asked people for advice that they would give their 8-year-old selves and advice they would give your 80-year-old selves. And from these conversations, I created a series of 10 letterpress posters that I installed back into the community. Here they are. And this is something that I did with Chronicle Books. Again, another kind of iteration from the inspirational signs project that were put into a number of their publications. This Everything is Going to Be Okay, which turned into, which was a book originally, and then it also was a calendar as well. And right now I'm working on a book project called Advice from Your 80-Year-Old Self, which is a continuation of these conversations that I've had with strangers about advice that they would give their 80-year-old selves. So that's it, so thank you.
Hello, I'm Lee, and my fascination is really kind of everyday material culture, so I try to pay attention and take a close look at the seemingly mundane aspects of our lives and how we interact with them, and that oftentimes ends up in some sort of creative twist that I make some sort of object that is really object plus experience, because generally there tends to be an interaction or some sort of activity that goes with it. So I'll walk through a few examples. This is my seed money. So one day, if you think about the way pennies are kind of scattered on the ground, and I'm like, what if I could just tuck this in a crack and it would grow? And so I decided to make some. So these are letterpress printed, and there's a variety of wildflower seeds embedded in them. And there's some nice little details, like they say, "In soil we trust," and things like that. I did all the denominations, and each one have different kinds of seeds. And then we rolled them up like bank rolls. I actually did this as a Kickstarter campaign and made hundreds of thousands of little paper pennies. This is a project I call Sugar Books, and this started as I was a guest, and my friend Chris teaches creative writing at the Oakland School for the Arts, and so I was a guest, and I designed this project for them, and so we made these cute little books out of different kinds of sugar packets. And then they could write in them, like answering questions like, what's the sweetest thing someone's ever done for you? Or like in the sweet and low one, it's like, write what kind of picks you up if you're feeling down. So there were different kind of prompts and themes that corresponded to the different kinds of sweetener packets. And then the idea is to leave them around town and the little sugar things in cafes or at Pete's or whatever, and then people stumble upon them, they can add their own words, their own answer to the question, and then put them back. This is my project called the World's Smallest Post Service, which I started back in 2008. And I strapped that little tiny American Girl doll desk on my back and biked down to Sweet Adeline Bake Shop and set up a very tiny post office. So it was a transcription service, and passersby could stop, write a note, and then I would rewrite it with a micron on that stationery and send it off with a magnifying glass. And I ended up setting this up for like once a month for a year at the Curiosity Shop on Valencia, which is where I met Christina because she and some friends stumbled upon me there. This project's called With a Pencil in My With a Pencil in My Pocket. And I don't know if anyone's heard of the 500 colored pencils set. It's a subscription colored pencil set that's just massive. And I won a design contest they had that's what would you do with a set of 500 colored pencils. And so what I did was I redistributed the pencils each month to 150 different people received a new pencil each month, and each one has a unique name. And then their task was to go out and find or create or make some sort of experience in the world based on that pencil color and or its name. So you can see a couple examples there. Someone got mahogany and they went to a local furniture store and asked the shopkeeper to show them every single piece of furniture that was made out of mahogany. This is I guess I'll call it a board game. I also consider it like a Montessori preschool activity for adults. And it's a bunch of found objects, and you take turns placing them on the board and coming up with associations, creative associations between them. I was part of Allison Smith's Cries of San Francisco project. A bunch of people, I think maybe 50, had peddler personas. We walked down Market Street singing and hawking our wares, and I did not get as many strange looks as I was expecting, to be honest. And I sold some seeds. Each of my seeds had a sort of story, because they're all heirloom seeds. Let's see, I guess again, maybe 5 years ago, I started designing these knitting patterns that are very process-based. This one's called Knit the Sky, and you have colors of yarn that correspond to sky colors. And then every day you observe the weather, and you pick the strands that best capture that day's weather, and then you add a stripe. So at the end of a year, you have like a 1 year long scarf weather report. And then I sell these yarn kits, and then the patterns are free downloads on my website, and then I have a whole book forthcoming next year of these projects. So for my Chronicle stuff, a couple years after I met Christina, we ended up doing this little DIY stationery set based on my tiny post office. And then we did Connexio, is the version of my board game, which I originally titled Infinite Possibilities. So that's how that turned into a product. And then my museum is a guided journal. It's simple line drawings that are basically museum display cases and frames that you fill with whatever you like. So you make your own collection of important things. And then Lucky You just came out a few weeks ago. They're basically scratcher cards combined with a greeting card. And so you get to write what's behind the scratcher area, and you put the sticker on and send them. And then these are new this summer, spring as well. Started with the one on the left, Letters to My Future Self, and so it's basically a bound book of aerograms. And so the envelopes open and fold down, and then you write letters to yourself. There's different topics, and then you seal them and you date them, and you put what date you're allowed to open it in the future. So those are my things. Great.
This is me, Brian McMullen. Thank you for having me, Christina. Thank you. I've never been I'm a CCA lecturer, but I teach exclusively in the San Francisco campus, teach typography classes. I'm a writer, artist, designer. I'm teaching students right now to make their own alphabets. One student of mine took a garden hose and made an entire script alphabet out of a wet garden hose the other day. It was exciting, really exciting. So some of my work, this is me with an issue of McSweeney's Quarterly. So for 7 years, I was the senior art director and one of the senior editors at McSweeney's, a literary publisher in San Francisco. And one of the issues I co-edited and art directed was in the shape of a human head. Here it is busking on the street. It's pretending to be a homeless head here. This is all the contents of the box. So it's a literary magazine. So you have a set of postcards that form a catfish with little men inside. You have a portion of a failed novel by Michael Chabon, the novelist. He gave me this fragment of a novel he spent 6 years writing and then abandoned. And then every right-hand page is a page from the manuscript. Every left-hand page is autobiographical annotations of how his life was falling apart at the time that his novel was falling apart. There's a tiny little scroll it's a 40-inch long scroll of fortune cookie fortunes, written by this hilarious woman I know. There's a screenplay called Bicycle Built for Two that was written for Dana Carvey and Mike Myers by Tim Heidecker of Tim and Eric Awesome Show. Good job. Great job. Is it good? It's great job, right? Etc. So a whole bunch of fragmentary pieces. We put it in a human head, and it was an issue of our literary quarterly. This is a book cover I had to design in 12 hours. It's called The McSweeney's Book of Politics and Musicals. We sometimes collaborate with Vintage Books, and there's a team of people who had to do a cover. It didn't work for whatever reason, so I was asked to fix it really quickly. I agreed to fix it not knowing that the deadline was imminent. I found this US flag suit, and that's my son, and there we are. I thought it was funny to wear a crown and not have a face and represent America and have my son be in an army costume. I think the symbolism is obvious. This is a project I did as an artist called Pantalaine. It's a whole clothing line of clothes that are intended to be worn by 2 or more people at the same time. Those are my friends Brad and Joy. This is our Sweat Heart Sweet shirt, and it features the logo I designed for my wedding with my wife, which is you may notice that the heart has an additional bump. That's why we call it the Extra Love Heart, and that is the official wedding logo I designed for our wedding. So this was inspired by, I was invited when I was freelancing for McSweeney's many years ago. This is a hug jacket. It's got extra arms. Couch dress, that's my wife. It's a couch designed to be worn by a woman and her couch. Dress designed to be worn by a woman and her couch. It's all crocheted. So there was an issue of McSweeney's that was a junk mail issue, and I was invited to, said there's no budget, but why don't you create a fictional fantasy mail piece? So I said, let's do like a TJ Maxx or Sears style circular advertising great deals on America's favorite plural clothing. So this came together really quickly. My wife and I made all these clothes. We've now made and sold about 100 of these sweatshirts, and it's us all one at a time. It's a fun project. Pantalaine. I ran the kids' books department at McSweeney's for many years. McSweeney's McMullen's. This is my own book. It's a dos-a-dos format book, hang glider and mud mask, painted by Jason Yeagle, who's a CCA alumnus, and now like a internationally recognized fine artist, wonderful guy, exhibits a lot in town. So it's a book that you can read. You can start reading from either side. It's hard to kind of tell right here, but it opens up. It has 2 front covers, 2 spines, and it reads in a continuous circle. So it's a book that never ends, and it's about these 2 characters. One is a hang glider, and one is a mud-masked woman, who a Goodreads reviewer gave me 1 star because she said that character was terrifying. But Daniel Clowes liked it, so that's all right. I was the senior art director of Lucky Peach, which is a food magazine we started at McSweeney's. It was an art project I did for that. 2nd issue was all about fruit, so I created I invited a bunch of artists to create fruit stickers, and this was featured on the Jimmy Fallon Show. Fruit stickers for fruit that you can peel off. So Tucker Nichols, there's a sticker he made there called Actually Pretty Tasty. There's one that says organic, please wash before using for sex stuff, etc., etc. So it's fun to be able to take a mainstream food magazine and put an honest to God artist project in it. Some personal drawings. So I recently quit my job at McSweeney's after 7 happy years. It was wonderful. I gave up my salary. And these are some drawings about desperation and my own personal depression. This is a man wearing a condom on his tongue, and there's a happy guy sitting on it. And then this is one thing I wanted to show. This is an ongoing art project of mine, probably the longest ongoing art project. It's called Meta Greetings. And since the mid-90s, I've been going into Hallmark stores and American Greeting stores. And I've been stealing the backing cards, the cards behind the greeting cards that locate you. And I have about 4,000 of these in my collection. I used to work at Cabinet Magazine up in Brooklyn, and very generously allowed me to publish a selection of them. I'll just read one column really quickly. Over on the far right, you're my tell it like it is friend. I love you because you're so real. I love thinking about you. I love being in love with you. I love the private world that you and I share. Love is not always enough. I'd like to put this behind us. I'm so proud of us for staying together. Cope, write your own message. Mom, I haven't been perfect. For my mother, who's also a friend. Vietnam. 99-cent apology and goodbye. All right, thanks. That's some of my work. Oh yeah, I'm sorry. So Christina allowed me to put together 100 postcards at McSweeney's postcard box for Chronicle Books. We called it Greetings from the Ocean's Sweaty Face. And it was about 20% all new material created by artists and writers who worked at McSweeney's, and about 80% repurposed art and writing. And so we had tiny short stories, art, just all kinds of weird stuff. Christina let us do whatever we wanted. And I also edited and designed this kind of oral history coffee table book called The Art of McSweeney's, which was wonderful to work with Chronicle on, with Christina and her colleague Steve Makis. And that came out a few years ago now. Art of McSweeney's Greetings from the Ocean's Sweaty Face. Still available.
So now we have the talking discussion part, and if you forget who anybody is, so Lee has the letter, Susan's in the middle. You can just imagine diagonal lines going over. I'm going to sit on a lower chair because I'm feeling too high up on that stool. So maybe you guys could talk a little bit about if there were any seminal moments or magic moments or telling moments when you were like, okay, this is a moment when something is going to change or launch in my art career.
I can go first here. Well, so the World's Smallest Post Service, I definitely did not start to make a living with. Was not the idea at all. It was just a quirky little, art project. And then, I guess after I'd been setting up shop for a few months, someone who was guest blogging at Boing Boing wrote this very thoughtful, wonderful essay about kind of magic nooks, and he waxed poetic about this tree nook that had a diorama in it from when he was younger, and then he covered my story. And I got, it was a few weeks before Valentine's Day in 2009, I think, and I had just recently decided to offer this service through a website too, because I'd been in Ready Made magazine, and I was like, oh, somebody might want to do it that doesn't live here. And then I got like 1,000 orders in 3 weeks after that Boing Boing coverage, which was obviously incredible. And I'd been working half-time at a natural perfumery, and I was totally sick of it, and I'd like just decided to leave, and then that happened. It bought me some time to kind of figure out next steps for trying to turn that into something that, to my great surprise, was not going to be just a dinky little art project.
I guess a little similarly, I actually I worked as a curator in a nonprofit art organization in the South Bay called the San Jose Institute of Contemporary Art. So I was there for 6 years, and working there, but also, very slowly kind of maintaining my own art practice on the side. And there came a point where I was focusing more like mental space and actually having more opportunities in artistic endeavors of my own than, being able to kind of fully focus on my work there. And it felt like after being there for 6 years and then having several different opportunities that were kind of pushing me to focus more on my art, I felt like it was a great opportunity to switch gears a little bit and try focusing more on my art practice. So it was, at a certain point I felt like, well, I guess the world is asking me to put this part of me out there at this point. And so that was only about 1.5 years ago now, so I still feel like I'm very new at this process and trying to figure it all out.
What about you, Brian? You had the dream job and then decided to jump ship.
Yeah, so I'm 35. I'm going to run for president. I'm 35. no, but so, yes, I've been very fortunate ever since I got out of college. Very fortunate to right away start working as the managing editor and original graphic designer of this great magazine in Brooklyn called Cabinet. And then, yeah, worked for many years full-time with McSweeney's. And yeah, the last 3.5 years, built the kids book department, was the one paid employee on staff working on this kids book department, McSweeney's McMullen's. And I decided at the end, like I decided here I am, I'm in my mid-30s, I've always been a writer, I've always been an artist. I got into editing and designing. I'm a self-taught designer. I got into all this because of my own love for making my own work, and I've always loved designing the projects I edit and write because I want to always have a feel for the shape of the thing, and I'm very interested in. I think of a book as like a sculpture almost, or like as well as being an editorial project, it's also an object and an opportunity to craft. So anyway, all this is to say, I'm kind of doing. I feel like I'm doing kind of a reverse of a typical career where I've chosen to suddenly become a freelancer and give up a salary, a great job, a dream job even, and it's not based on like 7 distinct criteria that I can point out for you. It's based on following a hunch, which is how I've always operated ever since I was a teenager. It's always been about following a hunch, like, gee, I think I'd like to write this poem. I think I just want to reach out and give this poem to these 5 people in my school. I think I'll go to Kinko's today and make a booklet. I'll just set myself the goal. This is me at 15. I think I'll just go to Kinko's and by 1 a.m. tonight, I'll have 30 copies of a little zine. Following hunches, and so I'm following this hunch right now, and I think, yeah, so I wrapped up the last of my full-time work at McSweeney's over the summer, and the one last thing to say about it is, in college and in my early career, I was told constantly, like, are you going to be an editor, are you going to be a writer, are you going to be a designer, are you going to be an artist? Which one are you going to be? Are you going to be on this floor of the building, or are you going to be on that floor of the building? And my answer was always, I just don't know. And I just kind of didn't care. But so then I discovered as a reader and a fan, places like Cabinet and McSweeney's. And McSweeney's was a great home for me because it happens to be founded and run by a guy who is himself an artist, designer, and writer. So I sort of leapt at the chance to show this person my work years ago. And this person, Dave Eggers, understood kind of where I was coming from in a way and offered me some shelter and allowed me to grow and help that business. And so I wasn't, I just trusted that something was out there. And right now I'm sort of, I've just leapt off this cliff and I'm in the trusting mode. So my mind and my heart are currently,
We're here for you,
we're in
Frank.
trust mode. Thank you.
Speaking of, you said you got in touch with Dave Eggers. How do you now, at this stage in your guys' careers, work to get the word out? How much do you use social media or newsletters? Basically, what's your best method of communication?
For me, it's a combination of all those things. I think really also maintaining relationships that I've had, whether it's from the people that I've met working as a curator or working through school. And I do use email as the primary way of getting the word out for the work that I do in the form of an email newsletter. And then I do also use Facebook and things like that as well. But I think for me, actually, reaching out to people and email is the best way that I've got the word out for what I do.
Yeah, email definitely in terms of a newsletter for me as well. And I have a pretty large listserv because the items that I design, some of them I also retail. And so on my website, people they might be Christmas shopping and then sign up for my newsletter. And so that's fun because then if I want to do a project like that colored pencil one, I have a community of people to draw from that want to participate and things like that. I don't really do much social media. I have a Facebook page for my business, but it probably gets updated like 2 posts a year. And I think that stuff has a lot of potential, but it's kind of just not my style and it's not a lot of fun for me. I think that I really kind of thrive when I work in a cave, to be honest. So that's what I mostly do.
I also think working with other organizations is always great, or having partners to work with helps you get the word out even more, like whether it's an arts organization or anything, working on a book with Chronicle, that's part of a compilation of things that has your name and your gallery in the back of it. Those are ways of just getting your work out there in the world.
Yeah. I use Facebook. I just have never gotten around to, every time I type in, I think I've typed in TWITT, and then I've just sighed. This is not, and I'll tell you, like, I hear, I've gotten that far, I've never gotten to the ER.com. I think it would be a great idea to have a Twitter account. Like, I like MailChimp at work, I liked it, you could do a lot with it. I'm not in the stage of my now new full-time career as a writer and artist of worrying about engaging with those brilliant and terrifying technologies. I think that it's easy to become like the 100th MailChimp newsletter, and I don't like again, I just sigh at the weight of thinking, like, what the fuck is my fucking font gonna fucking be or something? I think I'm just gonna build a giant wooden ship with my son.
Well, I liked, actually, we had a lunch earlier, and I liked what Brian talked about when we were talking about reaching out to people. You would write
Talk to us about
fan letters, fan mail to people.
Oh yeah, so this is my
write things that matter.
So this is how I got my first 2 jobs at Cabinet May Sweeney's. And this is my one piece of advice that I feel like is worthwhile, and I do it myself. Is if I like something, I write the person. I find out who the person was who made it. This sounds, I think, like a simpleton thing, but it's true. If you actually do it, it's cool. What do you like? Okay, identify the things you like. Figure out who the people are who made them. Sometimes it's not obvious. For example, if it's a magazine, who's the managing editor? Who are these people on the message? Write them a fan letter. Say, I really like Gigantic Magazine, James. Yay. I think I'll write to you. I think I'll write you a letter. You don't know who I am. A 1 paragrapher, a handwritten letter, and mail it. And because having been on the other end of it, a career for 13 years on the other end of publishing, there's a lot of it that's anonymous and thankless. And while it's true that I get like a deluge of mail, like this illustrator's postcard or that writer's manuscript, what very rarely comes across the transom, I've found, is a genuine, just like, fan letter that says, you know what, hey Brian, I've been following your work since 1923, and I love that thing you did.
And I think the key also is that you're not writing it because you want something from them.
That's it.
It's because it's something you
connection,
love, and you're
right.
just thanking them for bringing it
Yeah.
into your life.
Yeah,
right?
and so it's just the first interaction, sending a letter that says,
Yeah.
I really liked this. And
Yeah.
how good does it feel when somebody clicks the like button on your Facebook post? Well, how
Yeah.
good does it feel when you get a letter from
Yeah.
somebody? I don't know.
I totally send letters
yeah.
like that too. One thing I will say is that expect to not hear back half the time.
Sure. Yeah.
Something you love, a writer or whatever, and you send them this really thoughtful, heartfelt thing, and maybe they're really just too busy. And you have to be able to put your heart out there and risk not hearing back, and be okay with that too. For me, it's that the benefits outweigh the costs there in terms of that.
Yeah.
Any suggestions or words of wisdom to, wait, no, I'm not gonna ask that question. Different one. Do you think of what you do as a business? Like, when is it for the love and when is it for a business proposition? I think Lee, I want you to talk to
that's all mixed up in my world for sure. I would say everything starts as just art, and I get an idea, and then it's like, okay, I want to make this thing. Is it a gift for my mom, and I make one? Is it for all my friends? Is for like Christmas presents, or is it something that I'm gonna kind of self-publish and self-produce and sell via my online store, or I also have things in like a couple hundred retail shops. So is it that, or is it the kind of thing that makes more sense to work with a publisher on? So I don't have a divide between like, oh, this is the fine art part of my life, and this is the part that makes money and supports it. It's much messier than that, which I'm fine with, because I don't feel like, a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want money to get involved with my creativity and my art, it ruins it. And maybe for some people, depending on what you do, it does, but for me it doesn't. And I love the distribution of taking, you know, a fine art type idea and then packaging it up into something small that can distribute widely and lots of people can enjoy it.
Sorry, I was just thinking about your work too, because I think I'm always really excited to see the way that you do that. And I don't know if you want to, I think that just seeing you have a whole like online presence where you have a website and like you have different products that are sold too. Like, I don't know if everyone knows that either. I think, I just think it's a really exciting way of working. But for me, in terms of whether I see my work as a business or art, I would love to see my work as a business. I think right now I'm definitely at that seed beginning stage of everything, and recently have just decided that when people ask me to do things, I actually want to get paid for doing things. So that's sort of where I am. You know, when someone asks, "Oh, will you come and speak to my group of middle school students?" They're really inspired by what you do, which is the kind of work that I love doing. Now, instead of just jumping up and saying, "Yes, of course, I'll spend all day 8 hours with your students and create a plan beforehand." Now I'm a lot better at asking for things that I actually need and valuing the work that I do. So I think that in making the decision of shifting my life, I'm prioritizing asking for things that I need for when people are actually engaging with me and asking me to do projects with them. But I still feel like I'm working out the whole business end of what I do. But I think that even as artists who are, if there is this thing that exists that's like a division between like being a designer or being an artist or being a writer, like I think there's actually a lot more fluidity to it, and I think all of us have to think of ourselves as people that are engaging in a market and trying to find ways to monetize what we do, whether it's working with a nonprofit, working to find grants to do larger scale installations or public art projects, or building a line of products. So I still feel like I'm figuring out that that magic mix of how to make money out of what I'm doing, and I'm still sort of at the phase where I'm trying to monetize the work that I'm doing in one way or another.
Yeah.
Is there anything else of what you know now that you wish you'd known before you started, or earlier? You learn now that you wish you knew earlier in your career?
There's so many things.
I mean, asking for money
yeah.
for your work, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you stick around, I think for me, I just feel like I stuck around long enough to be able to continue to do the things that I want to be doing, and continue to think that what I was doing was worth doing, and there was enough internal motivation to drive me to do things. So that's something I've learned.
Yeah, I think really trusting voices, that voice of I shouldn't accept this, or I shouldn't go down that path, or feeling like, I don't know, I have this way sometimes I have felt in my career, sometimes I'll feel like asked to do something, and then I'll accept it, and then I'll immediately feel somehow weirdly apologetic, like if this person who has sought me out, I will give them, say, 3 examples of an direction, and then I'll immediately feel like apologetic about it somehow. Like if they come back, I'll expect them to say some critical thing, and then I'll be like, well, of course we should change it this way or that way. Like, I don't know, I feel like I've been very easy to, I think I haven't been quick enough to remember that I've been sought out for a reason. I have to remind myself, or my wife has to remind me, they seek you out for this work that you do for a reason, and you don't always have to change. But I think just like trusting that standing your ground can be a healthy and good thing, and it's not like I come from a family of assholes, and I love them to death. But like, I got a brother and I got a dad who, every restaurant you ever went to something was wrong, and so I was the younger one, and I never wanted to rock the boat, never wanted to be the one to make my mom do this, you know. So, but the thing is, I've learned that sometimes, you know, there's a fine line between being aggressive and being assertive, and I feel like I've been more confident in my assertiveness only as I've become 34, 35. So I think trusting that assertiveness is okay is a lesson I'm continually having to vocally remind myself of so often.
I was definitely surprised that these kind of quirky little things I like to make by hand, that there was actually a market for them. So it might have been nice to know that earlier. And I imagine that there are many, many people out there that make, you know, an amazing handcrafted something for, you know, their boyfriend's birthday, that it doesn't even occur to them that, like, maybe other people would like these too. Obviously, it's a very involved process making things in mass and then reaching the people to buy them. But that was a surprise for me that might have been nice to know earlier. One other thing I was going to mention about that difference between the sort of art and business is that I have a lot of like more kind of fine art ideas too that I know are not monetizable, and I specifically made the choice that I wanted to have a business to try to self-fund that stuff, largely because the thought of applying for grants in terms of like the response rate of getting them sounded like a full-time job in and of itself. And I also just, I wanted to be able to say, like, I want to do this project and I'm going to just do this project and not depend on a sort of external authority to tell me that my art is worth doing in the world. So I'll let the world decide, you know, or maybe it's just for me and a small community of people, and that's, you know, that's worth doing too, so.
I think we have just a couple minutes, maybe -1 minute. But if anybody has any questions for any of these folks up here? Going once? Yes?
In each of your collaborations with Chronicle or even Brian, your work with McSweeney's over the years, like when you were first starting out, in maybe your initial work with Christina, did you have any particular lessons that you learned in working with, you know, kind of like a larger scale commercial client that you would give, you know, that you'd like to share with anyone, because that relationship is really different?
I definitely do. Let go. Is Kate in here yet? Hi. You know, because when I make things by myself and I can take forever and it's, you know, present for someone, you can get it just exactly how you want it. But it quickly became clear that there's a lot of compromises involved, and no, I'm sorry, but we can't have the tiny cancellation ink stamp in the tiny mail stationery set, and, you know, like, have a good cry and then just let go and be like, whatever, that's fine. And the point is that, you know, to engage in that kind of collaboration, it's for the benefit of making something that is going to go out to a lot of people that are going to get to enjoy it and love it. And maybe it's not exactly how I wanted it to be, but that's much better than it not going out there at all. And also, there's certain things, like in the email I sent you this morning, that I know that I prefer to just defer to my editors and the graphics people there, because they know what they're doing, and I'm you know, always happy with how it turns out. And so to also just like trust the team, and that this is a collaboration. This is not just them hiring you to do your independent work and distribute it to the world.
Yeah, I would just say it was like suddenly I feel like I had been driving jalopy, okay, and then suddenly I'm working with Chronicle. It's like, step right into the limousine, sir. We have a whole team that can help you. You know, we have Brooke.
We provide limos.
We have Brooke, who can be an art director on your project. She's your teammate. And we have Christina, who is going to be enthusiastic about every ridiculous idea you throw. Like, I feel like I was throwing ridiculous postcards in the mix, and you were liking them.
Did you start
No,
testing
you were
her?
liking them, and but so it was. Let's just say, like, I came from a place of having to do all the print sourcing, having to do all the editing or whatever, and you guys brought a team, and suddenly made the job of having a team that helped collaborate on various aspects as professionals was a real new and great experience for me.
Yeah, I think that goes to that you want to work with people who you trust. Somebody asked a question earlier about, what if you send a proposal into a publisher and then they copy it? Well, you probably shouldn't send something to somebody who you don't trust, and I think in that way it's worth working with people who you trust, so that the people who do graphic design, you trust them that they're going to do great graphic design, and they trust you for, you know, the authorship that you bring.
Yeah, and that goes for every kind of professional relationship that you have. Like I work with galleries, and that's a whole other thing entirely. And a lot of the relationship that you have to build with them is based on trust, or you have to keep really good records because there isn't that trust there either. So, but ultimately, when you do trust someone and you have that great working relationship with someone, really valuing the input that they have to give you and not feeling so stuck to how you imagine things are supposed to be. Is that it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Bridget Watson-Payne. I'm the art book editor at Chronicle.
And I'm Kate Woodrow. I'm also an art editor specializing in GIF formats.
And I'm Brooke Johnson, and I'm a designer, and I primarily work on art publishing.
So real briefly, what we're going to cover in our talk, just a really quick intro, which you probably at this point don't need, but we'll go super duper fast about Chronicle Books, who we are and what we do. The different ways we work with artists and illustrators and authors, crafting a pitch and getting in touch with publishers when you want to work on book ideas, and then also the different ways that we work with designers as well on our books. So who we are and what we do at Chronicle Books. We're a San Francisco-based independent publisher. We publish a wide range of books which are primarily visual. So almost all our books have some form of visuals in them. We also publish an extensive list of gift products, everything from blank notebooks to stationery to more involved formats like Lee's board game. And we also do digital publishing. Every book that we publish, virtually all, are now also simultaneously published as ebooks at the same time. What we publish breaks down roughly on the book side into these categories: lifestyle, art, children's, pop culture, and food and drink, all of which obviously make sense as very heavily illustrated books. And they range from the very highbrow to the very, very lowbrow. We try and keep it eclectic, verging not into schizophrenic.
This is a sound book. That's how lowbrow we can go.
And this is the definitive history of color in the 20th century from Pantone, so that's how highbrow we can get. We partner with a lot of really, really cool brands in art and entertainment. We've done books and products with all these guys. And we also partner with amazing artists, illustrators, and authors, of which this is just a small sampling. And retailers like us a lot and say we're pretty cool. So diving into how we work with artists and authors, since we all work at Chronicle, our examples are drawn from Chronicle. Much of what we're going to tell you can be extrapolated to other publishers, although not everything. It always is a good idea to check other publishers' websites and see if this same stuff holds true. Similarly, because we all work on art books, I think all of our examples are drawn from art books and formats, which is probably pretty relevant to you guys. But a lot of what we'll tell you can also be extrapolated to other things Chronicle does, like lifestyle or cookbooks or other kinds of things. So when we say author at Chronicle, we, as you've seen today, have a pretty broad, different range of possibilities of what that might be. Our authors are not just writers, but artists, illustrators, designers, photographers, curators, all do books for us. And there's a couple of different working models that happen. The traditional author relationship, where someone is paid in advance against royalties and retains the copyright of their work. And then a freelance relationship, which could be a freelance writer, illustrator, designer, etc., who's paid a flat fee and who may or may not retain copyright to their work depending on the arrangement and the deal that is struck. So how do creatives create visual publishing? How does the magic happen? What I've got here are a bunch of examples and case studies that just show you the wide range of possibilities. I think a lot of times it's not always obvious when you're looking at the finished book how did this book come to be? So there's a lot of different ways it can happen. In this case, 3 very curatorially minded authors. They are actually themselves an illustrator and 2 designers, but they also have really curatorial brains. Got together a massive group of people, 75 different illustrators and 75 different writers, to all come together and collaborate on this group project, a book about art and science called The Where, the Why, and the How. In this instance, an artist and illustrator, Julia Rothman, wrote the text of this book about New York City and illustrated it herself. So the whole thing is her project, both words and pictures. Here's an example that you've already heard about today, where an author who is primarily, first and foremost, an artist and now also a writer, wrote a book, and then we hired, the publisher hired an illustrator to create the illustrations for her book. In another instance, this book about Dorothea Lange, a writer wrote a manuscript about the subject that she was really passionate about, Dorothea Lange's life and work, and then gathered existing visuals, Dorothea Lange's photographs, as well as archival images to illustrate her text and put together a photography book. In this instance, this is a book called 10,000 Stories, where a writer and an artist who happen in this case to be a husband and wife team collaborated together and are equal partner co-authors, making words and pictures, kind of in tandem, side by side. In this case, this is a book called A Compendium of Collective Nouns. There was a design studio called Whoop who had created this beautiful body of work of images of collective nouns, things like
a gaggle of geese.
A gaggle of geese, a murder of crows, all that kind of stuff. They were obsessed with that kind of language. They made these beautiful images, but for it to be a book, it needed text. We wanted interesting lore about all of these fun words and phrases. So we hired a writer, a freelance writer, to come in and create the text to go into this book. And then Lee's project that you just heard about, we especially like these kinds of pitches when we get them because they don't come in that often. People who think 3-dimensionally, people who aren't thinking just in a book, who are thinking in some kind of a format that will move and interact in an interesting way and that the user will actually write in or use in some interesting way, and that they've actually are able to mock up some sort of 3-dimensional sample of what this idea is and how it's going to work as a product.
Wait, can I just jump in? I wasn't planning to do this, but on this slide, I was going to say this later when I talk about how to pitch a publisher. Building prototypes, I'm just going to say it now because having this up here is a more effective way to say it. Building prototypes when you want to pitch a publisher is so effective. Like when Lee, I wish I could have included a picture of it, but Lee made a prototype of this to convey the idea, and it's kind of a 3-part concept, so it needs a physical sample, and it just gets the idea across immediately. It was such an effective way for me to understand what was in her brain, and it was like, oh my God, genius, we have to do this. And now it's one of our best-selling titles on our most recent season.
Oh, is it really? Oh. It's your go.
Sorry,
so I
wasn't really interrupting anyway. Okay, so next chapter is how to pitch it. Am I doing that? Okay. So I'm just going to tick through the major points of first, targeting the right publisher, because that's half the battle. Maybe it's us, but maybe it's not. And then second, how to craft your ideas into a compelling proposal. So before you have this idea, and before you send it out into the universe, you really need to understand as much about that universe that you're sending it out into. So the best thing that you can do, number one thing, is go spend time in the stores where you dream about seeing your book or your product. Because the book selling world now is so much vaster than bookstores. So wherever it is, if it's your local art supply store, or if it's Urban Outfitters, or if it's that really special gift shop on the corner, spend time in those places. Identify what you like about like-minded product, or what you hate about it, or what you think it's totally missing and the void that you can fill. You also might spend time looking online to see what reviewers are saying about your competition. They might point to a missed opportunity that you can speak to with your book or your product idea. And as you're in those stores, I think it's really important to think about the value that you offer and ask this really difficult question and really try to answer it of who, besides the people who love you, besides your mom, who is really going to buy your book, not just because they know and love you. We all love beautiful art books, but how many beautiful art books can we take home with us? Or how many beautiful art books are we really going to buy? I think it's important to think about whether your book has a secondary audience beyond an art book buyer. And what I mean by that is, beyond it just being beautiful or aesthetically interesting because it has your artwork in it, does it have a theme or a topic that targets somebody specific? So for example, this is perfect for the word nerd who loves clever, witty, wordy products, or this is perfect for the Francophile who buys anything Parisian or anything about France. So that secondary market can be really helpful in making a successful book. Lastly, doing this market research, going out into these stores is a great way to discover the right publisher for you. Pick up the books that you love, look at their spines and see who those publishers are. Spend time on their websites and see if your book idea would live well in their catalog and feel like part of what they do but not redundant to what they already do. And then you can also read the acknowledgments in books that you love. The author might mention their editor, they might mention their agent, and that might be a way to even more specifically target your pitch when you approach a publisher. You can address it to those people. So once you identify the opportunity in the market and who you should send your idea to, here are some things that you should put in your proposal. So specifically, I personally love to get a single PDF that I can easily print out or a package in the mail that is pretty neat and tidy and not covered in glitter or going to explode on my desk. So ultimately, editors are going to take your pitch and they're going to share it with a lot of people at the company. So it needs to be sort of neat and orderly and presented in a clean way. But that's how we like to get pitches, but if you're pitching another publisher, you should always look on their website for their submission guidelines, and they'll say if they want something via email or in the mail or whatnot. So in your PDF or your package, you should include a cover letter that really directly states your idea. And this is so important to not bury your lead. Just say it outright, and you should be able to convey your concept in a very concise way. And I mean concise like a sentence or two, not like a couple pages of the idea. Again, because ultimately, it's not just up to the editor to take on your book idea and buy it for the company. She or he is going to pitch it to a room full of people and have to explain it. And then throughout the life of the book, before it's even made, we're going to have to pitch it to many more rooms of people who are going to have to get it pretty quickly. And then once it's made, our salespeople are going to have something like 60 seconds to pitch it to store buyers. So they need to be able to say exactly what this book is. I mean, even if it's a complicated idea, can you distill it down into a one-line sort of elevator pitch? So yeah, don't bury the lead. What else? And then a lot of these things are obvious, but I think the most important thing, especially for you guys, is the more visuals, the better. Assuming this is an art-driven book and you're pitching it to an art publisher, first and foremost, we're looking for a gut reaction to the visuals. So just treat it like you would an art project. Convey your aesthetic. I love when I get a proposal and I sort of feel like I'm walking into an artist's studio. I'm really getting a sense of their personality. If the concept is funny, be funny in the proposal. If it's serene and serious, that's the mood it should convey. And that said, asking for lots of artwork, you don't have to have the book completely drawn or written or designed or photographed in order to pitch it. Sketches are great. Examples of existing work are wonderful to convey the concept. And like I said before, prototypes are incredibly helpful. Some successful pitches, artists have taken existing product of ours and either physically wrapped their art around it and made a mock-up or done that digitally. And being visual people, that's a very effective way to pitch us. And then the rest of the stuff is pretty self-explanatory. But one other suggestion I will say when you write your pitch, that's the point. Pitch a specific idea. It's not as helpful to just send us a link to your portfolio or send us a letter and say like, hey, we'd love to work together. Because every once in a while we will come up with a brilliant idea for your artwork, but really I want your brilliant idea. I want to hear your original idea and not just a link to your portfolio. And I say that because I think it's more important to go through the work of pitching a specific idea, even if it's not dead on the right idea. If it's put forth in a thoughtful way, it starts a conversation, and we might guide you into an idea that works better for our list. So I thought I'd show a sample proposal. This one is from Julia Rothman, and this is just 2 pages from her proposal. What I love about it is this is for a book that includes a lot of gatefolds, and she's sketched out her concept here as opposed to just describing it. Again, that just helps me understand the idea that's in her head. And she even she took pictures of some existing product that has gatefolds to show the functionality of it, and that was really helpful for us. Sorry, I don't know what's doing that. Yeah, okay. And then being clever always helps. This was a pitch. This woman pitched a product called the Inactivity Book, and what she did as for part of her proposal was she drew it as it would exist on our website in extreme detail, like this is exactly what our catalog page looks like online. And this wasn't something that I ended up acquiring, but it totally started the conversation, and I always remember this pitch, and it stood out to me. So, you know, little touches like that can go a long way. How else to make it stand out? These are bins of proposals to be reviewed. And I should say we do read every single proposal that we get, so no worries there. But yeah, I think the number one thing is just treating your proposal like a work of art is going to set you ahead of the game. Because first and foremost, we're looking for that positive gut reaction to the material. And if we're not having that gut reaction to the material, then we're probably not the right publisher for you. It's us. It's not you, it's us. We're also looking for projects that have that secondary audience for sales that I mentioned before. We want projects that bring something new to the category, and that's why that market research comes in handy. We look for things that have a timely hook or a perennial appealing hook for media and for merchandising. We are sometimes looking for authors who have an established community. That always helps if you're bringing to it a group of people who already know and follow your work. That obviously helps. And I would add, don't be afraid to talk about your idea with your peers. I think this is something that people often don't want to share their book idea for fear of it being stolen, or I'm not sure why else, but I would encourage you that nobody can steal your idea. If it's truly a unique idea, you're the only one who can render it in the way that you envision it. And in talking about it, your idea will evolve and improve. And I just think it can only help to talk about it. So like when you pitch it to Chronicle or another publisher, this shouldn't be the first time that you've put the idea out there. You know, test it out on your peers. And then lastly, do you need an agent? I think there's this perception that publishers require you to have an agent or prefer it, but that's definitely not our experience. About 50% of our authors have agents, and an even smaller portion of our artists have representation. So we work both ways. It can definitely be helpful if you're particularly averse to dealing with the business side of things and you just want to focus on making your art. Absolutely consider engaging with an agent. Or if you're trying to break into a very competitive category like children's book publishing, it can be very helpful to have an agent. Their relationships with editors can help your book proposal not get lost in the pile. And that's all.
So I am a designer. I don't hire authors. I hire freelance designers. And I sometimes hire freelance photographers and freelance illustrators. So if any one of you are interested in designing a project with us or contributing photography and illustration, I have some suggestions for you. So, but first, some shameless self-promotion. Sometimes designers write books, and this is a project that I put together with one of my coworkers, Jennifer Tolo Pierce, and it's, so, you know, designers can be authors too. So that's, you know, one way to spin it. But also, this book is going to be available for sale at the sale after this. And there's quotes from several people at CCA that we incorporated into this. So at Chronicle, we have 16 in-house people who design books for children, adults, and in all the different categories that Bridget mentioned. And we publish over 300 titles a year. And so between the 16 of us, we can't actually design everything ourselves. There's just too much work. So we end up hiring freelance designers. And these are a few projects that I'm working on this season that I've hired freelance designers to work on. And this book, Blue, I'm working with this woman, Annabelle Gould. She teaches at University of Washington in the design program. And I found her through a coworker. I heard about her through a coworker who knew her from grad school, and I just know she's really good with art books, so that's how I ended up hiring her. This book in the middle, this Rob Forbes books, is being designed by Volume Design. They're a local firm. Eric Hyman teaches in the program at CCA. And that was kind of, that hire came about in an interesting way where Rob Forbes, he founded Design Within Reach, and he's like very design-minded, was involved in who we were choosing to design his book. And so he had met Eric at some kind of local design function, and after they met, they hit it off, and Eric was actually one of the designers that I wanted him to consider. So that worked out really well, because then they were able to really work together to get the project to look the way they wanted. And then the book on the far side, Remake, I hired this woman who was a former fellow of ours, and we have this design fellowship that I'll talk about later. But so just to give you an idea of sort of how we find people, and how there's just, it helps, definitely helps if you've had some book experience. And I know that it's sort of like, well, how do I get book experience if I haven't had book experience? Okay, we'll get there. So actually, I'm going to talk about portfolio later. So I'll get back to that, sorry. So we hire freelance designers. And each designer in the design department pretty much does their own hiring. So you could, and there'll be our contact information at the end. If you're a designer and you're interested in working with us, then you can always email me, and then I can let the other designers know that you're interested in working with us. But that part is a little bit tricky, because it's like you can't kind of bug all 16 of us at once. But we do talk to each other quite a bit, and if we're looking for a designer, there are often emails that go out and say, I'm looking for somebody who's really good at pop culture, or I'm looking for somebody who's really good with type hierarchy, that kind of thing. So yeah. And then we also hire freelance photographers and illustrators. And are there any photographers in the room? Yeah, so that's usually in the food and drink designers that are hiring for food photography for cookbooks, or in our lifestyle publishing. There's some photography that we use for like craft books. It's like still life kind of photography. Occasionally we'll work with models, and depending on if maybe it's a fashion book or something like that. So the designers will look for different photographers that pretty much have the style that they want. And then the same with illustration. If there's a project where a writer has written the manuscript, like the Art Inc. example, then oftentimes, I don't know if the editor hired the illustrator.
Designer.
The designer did, yeah. So again, it's like designers are just looking for the right illustrator who has the right style for a particular project. And we do, a lot of the pop culture publishing is illustrated. And then we also have a fellowship program, which I mentioned before, which is really fantastic for recent grads. Are there any current design students here? No? Any recent grad design students? Yes. I have a poster for you. So this is I have a few posters if anybody wants one. We have this fellowship program. The application deadline for the next one is next week, but there'll be another one in March. So if you know anybody who is graduating with a design degree, we often hire CCA grads, and we just are looking for somebody who's like, I think within 2 years of being out of school. And a lot of the designers that end up getting hired at Chronicle have gone through the fellowship program. So how to get hired? So this is a book called Library of Dust that was designed by another CCA affiliated person, Bob Olfeldish, who teaches in the faculty. And it's David Meisel's photography, who is MFA from CCA. And David and Bob had this long relationship. And so, when we acquired David's photography book to publish, he wanted to work with Bob, and I was like, great. And so I hired Bob. So it was kind of similar to how that See for Yourself project worked. So that is one way that it can work, is if you know an artist and we're publishing their book, you could always come in with the artist. But that's not usually how it works. Usually it's you sort of bother us or send us your portfolio and then send it to us again and send it to us again. And I definitely encourage some being proactive and, not calling us every week, but, maybe every few months just to be like, hey, I want to work with you guys. We have a portfolio review, and you can drop off physical work. And I think there's guidelines for the portfolio review on our website. And is that the next slide? That's at the end. Yeah. So there's also submission guidelines. And so you can drop off your portfolio. And this is for design, photography, and illustration. But the designers will just be looking at these portfolios. So it's kind of different than if you're submitting a project idea, which Kate was just talking about. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. So for designers, what we're looking for in the portfolio is, particularly for books, like a good handling of typography and hierarchy, and that you have experience with a lot of running type, or some kind of editorial projects that you can show in your portfolio. And also, we look for an aesthetic that is, that we would call Chronicle aesthetic. And if that's not clear to you, then I would suggest just going to one of our stores and looking through a bunch of our books, and just you can get an idea of I mean, there's a range of visual looks, but you get an idea, right, Brian? Yeah. In fact, sometimes in critiques we say, you need to chronicle it. So yeah. So I think if a portfolio comes in and the work is all very sort of corporate or too dry or something that just doesn't relate at all to what we do, then it's not doing you any favors to sort of show us work like that. So definitely it's kind of like do your homework and show us work that relates to what we do. And so then, yeah, there's the portfolio reviews, and then you could just keep following up. So that's pretty much it. And here's our information if you want to get in touch with us.
it's such a wide range. We pay an advance and royalties, and the advance can range from a couple $1,000s to hundreds of thousands of dollars for some properties. I know that's sort of an insane answer because it's a non-answer, but and then authors earn royalties on their projects, and again, it's such a wide range. I mean, some of my authors get a really nice royalty check twice a year and earn their living from their books, and others not so much.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the finances are based on our projections for that particular book. So it's retail price, how many copies we are planning to print, and we do the math and conclude from that the advance we can afford to pay. We often wish we could pay, you know, if you did the math and did an hourly rate of what the time this person is going to put into creating the work for this book and came up with, you know, a salary, that is not what an advance is. An advance is intended to somewhat help subsidize the time and energy that someone's going to put into creating the work. And if all goes well, where the money really comes from is the royalties down the road. Yeah.
Is part of the process that you work with when you're doing a project with someone is to plan how the ways in which the book would be released and marketed, and kind of if there are any events associated with that, or is that a different division altogether? Or like who's kind of like an artist or designer's like point person who kind of like rides with them throughout? Is that you?
Yeah, so the editor is the person who's there from the beginning to the end, and then different teams come in a more in a more meaningful way at different moments. So it starts in editorial, and then design comes in, and then production comes in, and then eventually marketing, publicity, and sales come in for their roles. But the editor is kind of your captain.
Like one last question. I recently finished a book, and I really just wanted to get it done, so I do like print-on-demand blurb. And so I guess my question is, should I continue to try to self-promote myself, self-publishing, or should I, you know, take your advice and find out which publication, publishing firm for my book?
It really just depends on your goals. If you're just trying to sort of build up, you know, a body of something that you want to have quickly for yourself, or your friends, or your small community, you know, the same way you might self-publish a zine or something like that, something like Blurb can really work well for that. And I actually get proposals that are Blurb books fairly often, where people use that as a tool to show what they're envisioning the book would be. If you want to reach a wider audience with your book, one of the there's, we believe, many things that publishers offer, but one of them is much wider distribution. So if you want to get your book in the hands of lots and lots of people who you don't necessarily connect to personally, then it's time to start thinking about how do I pitch this to a publisher. And as well, I mean, all kinds of editorial and design input that can make your project even better.